I didn't even want to go. The email landed at exactly 9:47 a.m. Subject line, Dinner with the Reeves, Friday, 7 p.m. A formal invite from People Operations capped with a cheerful little smiley emoji, as if that somehow softened the blow. After 22 years of building Stratus Insight systems back when we were just four scrappy tech nerds in a leased storage unit, with a server that overheated if you breathed too hard, I was being summoned. Not for a board meeting, not for an innovation review, but to dinner with the CEO and his family. My name is Elena Ward, and I was the very first person ever hired at Stratus. I wasn't just a part of the company. I was the company. I designed our first back-end client systems on a borrowed laptop. I managed vendor contracts when our legal department was a 3-tab spreadsheet. I balanced budgets, pitched early-stage clients, and ran onboarding before we even had HR. Back then, Martin Reeves, our founder and CEO, used to call me the quiet engine. I kept things moving when everyone else was spinning in chaos. But over the past year, I felt the shift. Martin started drifting. My detailed reports were skimmed. My weekly strategy calls became bi-weekly, then monthly, then postponed indefinitely. My insights became legacy knowledge. My name started disappearing from internal decks. And then came the interns, all bright sneakers and buzzwords, throwing around synergy and market disruption like they'd just invented the wheel. Oh, I could feel the breeze before the window even opened. So when the dinner invite came, I knew. I just didn't know how cold that breeze was going to be. The restaurant was one of those glass-clad rooftop joints downtown, the Summit at Aurora Tower. Overpriced scallops, ambient lighting, and a view so curated it felt Photoshop. I wore my navy silk blouse, soft but sharp, and the pearl earrings my daughter gave me last Mother's Day. I looked how I always did, put together, professional, hard to ignore. Martin was already standing near the long white linen table, smiling too wide, arms open like a game show host. Beside him, Linda, his wife, looking every bit the elegant silent supporter. And then there was Avery Reeves, their daughter, blonde, polished, perfectly styled. She looked like she'd walked straight off the cover of Fortune in that cream linen pantsuit. Every inch of her radiated, curated success. Elena, Martin beamed. So glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, I said lightly, sliding into the seat across from him. My stomach, meanwhile, had coiled into a rope. Dinner began the way these things always do. Too much wine. Too many compliments that landed flat. Then Avery, ever the golden child, leaned in with a curious smile. It's just funny to imagine you guys working out of like a garage or something, she said, giggling behind her glass. I smiled. It wasn't funny at the time. Martin cleared his throat. Actually, Elena saved the company twice in the first 5 years. That defense analytics contract. She brought that in. It got us our first $1 million. Avery smirked. Well, every company needs its building blocks. Oh my God. I should have walked out then. I really should have. But I stayed, because I wanted to see just how far they were willing to go. Halfway through the halibut and saffron rice, Martin folded his hands like he was about to hand me a retirement plaque. Elena, he began, we've been doing some long-term planning. You've been instrumental in getting Stratus to where it is. Here it comes. But as we position the company for its next phase, we feel it's time to bring in a new generation. Fresh energy. New vision. I didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Just nodded slowly. Avery just completed her executive leadership program at Columbia, he added, puffing with pride like I hadn't mentored 5 Ivy League grads in my sleep. She's got brilliant ideas, rebranding, blockchain pivots, AI integrations. Impressive, I said coolly. What's the transition plan? He looked relieved. 6 weeks. She'll shadow you initially. We'll make the formal announcement after the quarterly call. Of course, there's a generous package. We want you to feel appreciated. And then came the blow. Avery leaned forward, fork poised, her eyes sparkling. Time to step aside, Granny, she said with a smirk. Let us take it from here. Oh no, she didn't. The table fell silent. Even Linda's fork froze midair. I looked at her, not saying a word, just letting the quiet stretch until it stung. Then I smiled. Completely understand. Because what they didn't know, what they never even bothered to check, was that Stratus Insight wasn't just a company I helped build. It was a company I owned, in a way they'd forgot. Back in 2003, 2 years after we'd launched, we were hanging by a thread. I'd just pulled an all-nighter cleaning up a billing catastrophe that almost lost us our biggest client. Martin came into my office, red-eyed, wrung out, and handed me a single-page agreement. "Alina," he'd said, "I can't pay you what you're worth right now, but if we make it through this, I want you to have a piece of it." At the time, I barely looked at it. It felt like a thank you note, more than a contract. I was tired, loyal, and stupidly hopeful. But years later, when we brought in outside investors and incorporated fully, I had a lawyer comb through everything. That's when I discovered the truth. It wasn't symbolic. It was real. 5% equity, with full voting rights, with ownership, and I had never sold it. I never brought it up, never bragged, never reminded Martin of the agreement he'd once handed me like a lifeline. I didn't have to. I was part of the company's DNA, or at least I used to believe that. But over time, Stratus changed. And so did Martin. He stopped seeking my counsel and started chasing trends. Consultants breezed in and out like fashion seasons. But the ones who lingered were always the ones who just adored Avery's polished LinkedIn profile. Suddenly, loyalty didn't matter, results didn't matter. Optics ruled everything. And I no longer fit the image. I wasn't glossy or trending. I was enduring. And that made me invisible. That following Monday, I walked into Stratus HQ like nothing had happened, nodded to reception, grabbed my black coffee from the break room machine that still hissed like a steam engine, and logged into my system. No changes, no restrictions, no announcement, just silence. Noah Patel, our lead data engineer, popped his head into my office. He had that look again, eyebrows lifted, lips tight. "You good?" he asked softly. I gave him a small smile. "Just had dinner with the Reeves." He winced. "Yeah?" Words starting to get around. "People are confused." I met his eyes. Calm, steady, let them wonder. Because I wasn't ready to show my hand. Not yet. Instead, I opened the shareholder portal. There it was, my 5% stake. Untouched. Still mine. And with the wave of new investor capital flowing in, that modest slice had matured into something formidable. I downloaded everything. Stock agreements, board voting records, executive compensation data. Then I picked up the phone. "I'd like 30 minutes with Martin." "Private," I told his assistant. She blinked in surprise but nodded. "I'll check his calendar." When I stepped into his office that Wednesday, he gave me a weary smile and gestured toward the leather chair across from him. "Alina," he said like he was trying to sound casual. "How are things?" "Curious," I replied, settling in. "You didn't mention the equity I still hold." His smile cracked just a little. "I assumed you'd cashed that out by now." I didn't. I slid a printed copy of the shareholder agreement across his desk. "And unless I'm missing something, I still have voting rights." He laced his fingers together. "Alina, this doesn't need to be complicated. We're offering you a very generous exit." "I'm not leaving," I said, calm as glass. "Not yet. I'll support the transition. I'll do it with professionalism. But if Avery plans to restructure the company, if she wants to gut the teams or sell off assets, I want my say." Martin frowned. "You're holding on out of sentimentality." I leaned in. "No, Martin. I'm holding on to what I built." Then I stood up and left. Let him sit with that. That night, I pulled out the old filing cabinet from my home office. Dusty. Heavy. But sacred. Inside were artifacts, blueprints of our earliest architecture, scribbled notes from the first client pitches, even crude UI mock-ups I'd drawn on diner napkins. And buried beneath it all, I found it. An NDA, signed by Martin, dated 2005, acknowledging that several core systems and proprietary tools I'd developed came from pre-existing frameworks I'd designed during my consulting years. Most people would have forgotten that, but not me. I never forget. The next morning, I met with Tara Caldwell, my old friend and now one of the top IP attorneys on the West Coast. We sipped espresso in a quiet corner at Willow and Vine Cafe, just a few blocks from Stratus HQ. I slid the documents across the table. Can I protect this? She flipped through them slowly, expression sharpening with each page. Elena, you don't just protect this, you own it, at least a substantial part. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. 2 decades of loyalty and silence sat heavy in my chest. They think I'm a stepping stone. Tara smiled. Then let's remind them. Stones crack foundations. By Friday, the whispers had started. Why's Elena still here? Why hasn't Avery taken over yet? She looks calm. I passed them in the hallway and smiled. They thought that rooftop dinner was the end of my story. What they didn't realize is that it was just the beginning of my next chapter. Come Monday, Avery began hovering around my office. Not officially moved in, of course, but she was circling, like a hawk dressed in silk. She brought me coffee once, sat down like we were old friends catching up. Her voice, sweetened with artificial charm, her questions, razor-edged. So, who do we use for back-end systems maintenance? What's your process for vendor approval? Do you always approve budget requests manually? I looked at the open spreadsheet she was poking at, clearly lost. Always, I said. It catches errors. Automation doesn't. But predictive tools are only as good as the data behind them, I finished. She blinked. Right. But we're moving into the future now. Some of your methods are old school. Huh? There it was. The dig. I smiled back. Old school kept this company afloat through 3 recessions. But hey, feel free to learn the hard way. Yeah. She didn't like that one bit. By Wednesday, she'd sent out invites to her first strategy meeting. Vision 2.0 tie. Subject line. The future of Stratus begins now. Guess whose name wasn't on the list? Noah forwarded it to me. Thought you'd want to see this. His message read. I opened the agenda. Branding overhaul ops. Shakeup. Outsourcing of back-end systems. I actually laughed. Outsourcing back-end? That was half our client value. People didn't come to us for shiny interfaces. They came because our systems never failed. Because we didn't. Avery didn't understand Stratus. She only understood of it. The kind of knowledge you get from Sunday brunch with Daddy, not from bleeding for a company through sleepless nights, back-to-back pitch meetings, and fire drills at 2 a.m. She knew of the company. The version her father probably polished and served over avocado toast on Sunday mornings. Not the real one. Not the one I'd bled into. That same afternoon, Martin did something he hadn't done in years. He dropped by my desk. No assistant. No calendar alert. Just that faux casual energy he used when trying to soften a blow. Elena, he said, slipping into his politician voice, just wanted to make sure the transition goes smoothly. Avery's getting a lot of visibility already. Visibility isn't knowledge, I replied flatly. He paused. You've always been the soul of this place. I didn't blink. And you invited me to dinner to rip the soul out of it. He flinched. Just slightly. That's not what this is, he mumbled. Then what is it, Martin? I asked, keeping my voice low but firm. Because I built the systems. I kept the investors calm when you were off wine tasting in Napa. I held this company together while you were out playing visionary. Silence. I know about the Series C dilution, I added, watching him stiffen. You're prepping Stratus for acquisition. His eyes widened. How? I smiled faintly. I've been here long enough to read wind patterns. He didn't deny it. Just looked down. We had to make hard choices, he muttered. The board wanted a fresh face. A new story. A story that doesn't include me. He hesitated. We're offering you a package. I'm not interested in your package, I said coolly. I'm interested in what I'm owed. Then, I turned and walked out. Left him in his corner office, to sit with the discomfort of realizing the one person he'd underestimated was the only one still holding the thread. Back in my home office that night, I rolled open the old cabinet drawer, the one with the creaky wheels and layers of time embedded in the metal. Inside, 20 years of history, original systems architecture, scribbled notes from first client calls, diagrams on napkins that later turned into $1 million contracts. Then, I found it. The document. A non-disclosure agreement. Dated 2005. Signed by Martin himself. It acknowledged that several proprietary tools, platform frameworks, user permission models, diagnostic scripts had originated from my consulting work before I joined Stratus full-time. Details most people forget. But I don't forget. The next day, I met Tara Caldwell for coffee at Willow and Vine, the quiet bistro 2 blocks from Stratus HQ. She was already flipping through the folder before I'd even finished my latte. "Can I protect this?" I asked. Tara didn't even hesitate. "Alina, you don't just protect this, you own it." I let out a long, measured breath. It felt like 20 years of swallowed pride lifting off my ribs. "They think I'm just a stepping stone." She smiled, eyes sharp. "Then, let's show them that stepping stones crack under pressure." By Friday, the energy at Stratus had shifted. The whispers had begun. "Why's Elena still here? Why hasn't Avery taken over yet? She looks weirdly calm." I walked the hallways with a quiet smile. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. They thought they'd written the end of my story with a plate of overpriced fish and a faux toast to legacy. But I was writing the next chapter. By Monday, Avery was fully in her performance arc, hovering in my space, smiling through gritted teeth, asking questions she didn't really want answered: vendor lists, back-end protocols, client retention strategies. She'd even started drawing on the whiteboard, some shiny new model with buzzwords and arrows. That's when I saw it. It was my work, almost word for word from a client retention strategy I'd authored 6 years ago, right down to the staggered tier evaluation. I coined myself she must have been digging through the archives. When she noticed me watching, she smiled sweetly. "I'm just modernizing." She chirped. "Your work was a great foundation." I stepped closer. "No problem," I said. "Just cite your sources. Plagiarism doesn't look great on quarterly reports." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes after that. By Thursday, even the IT team was buzzing. Jenna Liu, my trusted ops lead, cornered me in the break room. "They're nervous," she whispered. "Avery's pushing changes that make no sense. And Martin's not saying anything. That's because he's not in charge anymore," I said calmly. Jenna blinked. Then, "Who is?" I met her eyes. "He just doesn't know it yet." She stared at me. "What are you doing, Elena?" "Setting the table," I said. "For what?" "For the storm." And I meant it. But I also planned to smile through it. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of Merlot, the lake quiet and still. My laptop glowed softly in my lap as I clicked through the drafts I'd been building. 3 emails, ready to go. One to the remaining 3 board members, reminding them of my 5% equity, and the clause that required unanimous consent for any executive restructuring. One to Gregory Stanton, CEO of Nexora Technologies, a company Stratus had nearly acquired last year, and one I'd maintained very cordial ties with. I requested a meeting. And one final email, to myself. Subject: leverage. Because I didn't want war. I wanted recognition. But if they insisted on pushing me out the old-fashioned way, they were about to find out just how old school I could be. The official announcement came Tuesday morning. All staff meeting. Mandatory. At exactly 4. Avery strutted on stage in the Stratus Auditorium, wireless mic in hand, strutting like a TED Talk pro while a slideshow looped behind her. Stock photos, corporate buzzwords, generic slogans, vision, velocity, victory. "Oh my God." Martin introduced her with forced warmth, calling her a breath of fresh air. Avery beamed, glowing like she'd just won a reality show. Then she said it. "It's time for a new chapter," she declared. A younger, leaner, and more innovative Stratus. There it was. Not even subtle. I sat in the second row, arms folded, watching the faces around me twist and fidget. Jenna looked stunned. Noah stared at the floor. Then Avery gestured to the projector, and up came the slide that made my jaw lock. Organizational Streamlining Plan Phase 1. I read every bullet point. Cuts to back-end operations, outsourced IT infrastructure, department consolidation, legacy management transition. They didn't even say my name, but I was right there. Afterward, she approached me in the hallway. Alone. Confident. "I hope you'll be graceful about this," she said softly. "It's what people expect of veterans." I tilted my head. "You mean women who've outlasted 3 CEOs and built the infrastructure your rebrand is trying to whitewash?" She didn't answer, just gave me that infuriatingly polite smile, like I was the problem for not quietly disappearing. That afternoon, an official envelope from People Operations landed on my desk. It contained a severance check with more zeros than I expected, an NDA and a clause requesting full knowledge transfer cooperation. And that's when they pushed too far. I stood, walked straight to Martin's office, envelope in hand. He was already bracing when I arrived. "Elena," he began. I didn't let him finish. "You let your daughter stand up there and pretend this was her idea. You let her stand up there and call me obsolete in front of everyone," I said, voice firm but even. "And now you want me to hand over my life's work like some loyal old dog." Martin exhaled, shoulders tense. "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I snapped. "Let me be very clear. I'm not signing anything. Not today. Not ever." He rubbed his temple. "Then, you're forcing us to terminate." "You're forgetting something," I said calmly, reaching into my bag. I placed the original shareholder agreement on his desk, pointing to the clause in bold. "I still have my board seat. You try to force me out without unanimous board approval, you'll be in breach of the founding agreement." Martin's face drained of color. "You can't be serious." "I'm deadly serious," I said. "You think Avery's ideas are flashy and new. They're reckless. Cutting back-end operations will cripple your infrastructure. And that predictive automation model she keeps hyping, it violates half of our active client contracts. You know that." He leaned back in his chair, silent. "I'm not trying to sink the ship," I added softly, "but I won't let you drag me down with it." That night, I met Jenna and Noah at a quiet diner tucked away on the east side of the city. We picked the corner booth, the one with cracked red leather seats and coffee that was always a bit too strong. I slid 2 manila envelopes across the table. Jenna raised a brow. "What is this?" "Proof," I said simply, "that what we built isn't just lines of code. It's intellectual property documented, time-stamped and fully traceable." Noah looked up. "Are you going to sue them?" "Not unless they make me," I replied. "But I want you both protected. Avery's already planning another round of cuts." Jenna nodded, her voice low. "PR's drafting the press release. She's cleaning house before the acquisition." "Exactly. Stratus is being packaged and polished, turned into a shiny object for someone else's trophy shelf." Noah leaned forward. "Are you going to stop it?" I shook my head. "No. I'm going to shape it." Over the next 3 days, I worked like a ghost. Silent, precise, intentional. I met with Tara again, this time to file a cease and desist letter, blocking Avery from reusing proprietary modules she'd pulled from my old architecture plans. I also sent a formal letter to the board, notifying them that I intended to vote against the restructuring, unless a third-party audit was completed immediately. And then, I had lunch with Gregory Stanton, the CEO of Nexora Technologies. Just a chat, just a salad, just enough to let something slip. "They're positioning for a sale," I said casually, watching his eyebrows arch. "That explains the talent reaching out to us," he murmured. "If you're interested, I can tell you which systems are worth protecting and who actually understands them." By Friday, the pressure had finally reached Avery. Her voice in meetings had a new sharpness. Her once effortless confidence had curdled into tension, and the people she thought would blindly follow her, they were starting to look back at me, and I didn't say a word. Because the storm she tried to unleash, I had already built the levees. By Monday, 3 of Avery's prized initiatives had collapsed like overinflated balloons. The vendor migration she promised would slash costs, delayed indefinitely, thanks to integration issues, also known as Noah quietly pulling a compatibility patch he'd written 2 years ago. The rebranding campaign, put on hold after legal flagged it for infringing on the trademark of a boutique tech firm. A boutique firm I just might have called. And the predictive analytics model? It imploded the moment it hit live client data. Garbage in, garbage out, just like I warned her. But Avery didn't back off. She doubled down. That afternoon, she called an all-department heads meeting. Mandatory. High stakes. Bravado on full display. Her smile was plastic. Her tone clipped. "We're experiencing growing pains," she said. "But we're on the right path. Disruption is never comfortable." From my seat near the back, I raised an eyebrow. Disruption works best when there's a parachute. You've cut every safety net this company ever had. Avery's smile barely held. "Thank you for your feedback, Elena." Martin sat slouched in the corner. Silent. Checked out. A shadow of a man letting his daughter steer a ship straight into an iceberg. After the meeting, Jenna caught up with me in the stairwell. "3 of our longtime clients called today," she said, her voice tight. "They're worried. One's threatening to walk if service quality drops again." I nodded. "Let me guess. Avery hasn't returned their emails." "Not once," Jenna said. "She thinks they'll wait. They won't." That night, I went home, poured myself a glass of Cabernet, and opened my laptop. 2 lines. Subject: follow-up from lunch. Body: "If your board is serious, now is the time to move." I hit send. Gregory Stanton had been circling Stratus for months, watching, waiting for the moment it would falter just enough to strike. I wasn't going to sabotage anything, but I was going to hand them a mirror, let them see what was happening behind the curtain. The next morning, I found Avery in my old office, feet up on the desk, casually tossing a stress ball like she owned the place. She didn't even glance up when I knocked. "Can I help you?" she asked, like I was some intern wandering in off the elevator. "I need a few minutes." She sighed, dropping her feet to the floor. "Make it quick." I stepped in, steady and calm. "You're losing the company." That made her sit straight. "I know you think people will follow you because you toss around words like innovation and branding. But this place wasn't built on slogans. It was built on trust, relationships, systems that actually work." She stood slowly, eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a chance." "A chance for what?" "To stop pretending you know what you're doing." She scoffed. "My father is being pushed to the sidelines by his own board. And you?" I said, my voice low. "You're just a figurehead too, just like him." That landed. She stared at me, cocky bravado starting to crack. I leaned in slightly. "You want to lead? Fine, lead. But don't burn the foundation down just to prove you can strike a match." She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. Later that afternoon, Martin called me into a private meeting. No assistants. No Avery. Just him, slouched in a leather chair, looking like the weight of a crumbling legacy was finally settling on his shoulders. "Elena," he said, gesturing toward the chair across from him. "What do you want?" I sat down slowly. "I want recognition," I said, "not a payout. Not a title. Just recognition." He rubbed his face like a man trying to rewind time. "The board is spooked. They've seen the instability. They know your name is still tied to every core system." "They should be spooked," I said. "They handed a multi-million-dollar operation to someone who thinks experience is a liability." "And Nuxora?" he asked cautiously. I smiled. "I had lunch with Gregory," I said. "The offer is real, but I haven't made a decision yet." Martin finally looked at me, really looked, the first time in months, maybe years. "You could walk away from all this," he said quietly. "I could," I agreed, "but I won't, because what I built still matters. And if they want to keep using it, they'll have to do it on my terms." That evening, I got a text from Jenna. "Client X just sent an official letter of concern to the board. Things were shifting." I replied with just 2 words. "Hold steady." Avery might have had the microphone, but I had the stage. And in just a few more moves, I'd be the one writing the final script. Thursday, emergency board session. The room was full, physically, yes, but also viscerally. The kind of full where tension crackled in the air. And no one dared breathe too deeply. The entire leadership team was there. Department heads, executives. Martin sat at the end of the table, 10 years older than he looked 2 weeks ago. Avery was beside him, flipping through a leather-bound notebook she hadn't written a single useful thought in. And directly across from me, Gregory Stanton, CEO of Nexora Technologies, sitting back in his chair with that detached, calculating calm of a man who was quietly evaluating whether to salvage a body or call time of death. Then Celeste Mora, the board chairwoman, stood. "Before we begin," she said, her voice even and cool, "we need to address the elephant in the room." She turned toward me. "Elena has brought to our attention several items, contractual, technical, and operational, that were omitted during our internal assessment of Stratus's transition phase." A ripple moved through the room. Martin's face hardened. Avery's eyes snapped to mine, and I saw it then. The moment she realized she had stepped into something far more dangerous than she understood. Celeste continued. "As per our original shareholder agreement, any executive restructuring that affects a stakeholder holding more than 3% equity requires unanimous board approval." She nodded to me. "Elena, would you like to speak?" I stood. No nerves. No anger. Just clear, grounded purpose. "I'm not here to cause chaos," I began. "I've never wanted chaos," I said softly, facing the board. "That was never the goal." My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I'm here because for over 2 decades, I gave everything I had to this company. And somewhere along the way, people started treating that commitment like a weakness. Like something disposable." Across the room, Avery's jaw tensed. I didn't look at her. "I don't want a crown," I continued. "I don't need a title, but I do want my work respected. I want my contributions acknowledged. And I want whoever takes the reins here to understand one thing very clearly: innovation means nothing if there's no foundation to stand on." Silent. And then Gregory Stanton, CEO of Nexora, cleared his throat. His voice was quiet, but it echoed across the boardroom like a verdict already delivered. "We've been watching this closely," he said, eyes scanning the room, "and we've seen the fallout. 3 of your major clients have raised concerns. 2 have paused contract renewals. And based on our internal review, the systems that make Stratus valuable are not nearly as autonomous as advertised." Then he looked at Avery. She froze. He turned back to the board. "Our offer still stands," he said, "but it is contingent on leadership stability. And frankly, we won't proceed if the current transition plan remains in place." In translation, Avery was done. Martin opened his mouth to protest, but Celeste lifted a hand. "Let's take a 10-minute recess," she said calmly. People stood. Whispers spilled into the hallway like smoke. I stayed seated. So did Avery. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. And this time, the arrogance was gone. "I didn't mean to destroy anything," she said, voice small. I met her eyes. "You wanted to prove yourself. I understand that, but you came in swinging, without ever asking what we were swinging at. You treated people like obstacles, and you treated me like a footnote." She swallowed. "What happens now?" I leaned in, just slightly. "That's not up to me anymore," I said gently. "That's the board's call." 10 minutes later, we reconvened. Celeste stood like a judge about to deliver a calm, final sentence. "Effective immediately," she said. "Avery Monroe is relieved of all transition leadership duties." Avery didn't move. "Martin Monroe," she continued, "will remain in an advisory role through the acquisition period." Then she turned to Miss Elena Wren, she said, her tone firm but respectful. "You'll lead the transitional advisory team, reporting directly to the board and our prospective partners at Nexora Technologies." I didn't smile. I just nodded. Later that week, I signed my consulting contract, 3 times my old salary, full autonomy, and authority over systems integration during the acquisition. Avery left quietly. No goodbye email, no farewell party, just a vacant corner office, and the faint trace of designer perfume. Martin stopped me in the lobby. He looked tired, worn. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. 2 months later, Stratus officially became part of Nexora. Most of the team stayed. I handpicked a new leadership group, people who understood not just the code, but the culture. Jenna became director of operation. Noah took over engineering, and half the company now reported to people I had personally trained over the years. But I didn't move back into my old office. I worked from home. A quiet house tucked by the lake. Twice a week I walked barefoot on the deck with coffee in hand, watching the sunrise as dashboards loaded on my screen. Smooth, flawless. The system still ran beautifully. The same systems I'd built. One evening, a message popped up in my inbox. Subject, Legacy, Elena. It was from Celeste. What you did, the way you handled it. We've never seen anything like it. You didn't just protect your legacy. You reminded everyone what real leadership looks like. I sat there a long time, just staring at the screen. It hadn't been about revenge. It hadn't been about power. It had always been about value, knowing it, owning it, and refusing to let anyone, no matter how polished or powerful, take it away from you. This story is a powerful reminder that real value isn't always loud, young, or trendy. It's earned through years of quiet dedication, experience, and integrity. Elena Ward gave her heart to a company she helped build from the ground up, only to be cast aside for someone newer, shinier, and far less prepared. But instead of crumbling, she stood her ground. She didn't fight with noise. She fought with knowledge, with leverage, and with legacy. Her story teaches us that knowing your worth isn't arrogance. It's power. And sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones holding everything together. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or replaced after a lifetime of giving, this story is for you. If you found strength, courage, or inspiration in Elena's journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter, stories that honor experience, resilience, and truth. And in the comments, I'd love to know what region or country are you watching from. Your presence here means more than you know.